My headlights skated across the slick black streets of Queens while the radio muttered an all-night talk show that only other sleepless people seemed to call. 5 nights, maybe 6, had passed since I'd last managed more than a minute or two of unconsciousness. I'd become an amateur chronologist of my own decline. First the tightness behind the eyes, then the metallic taste on the tongue. Finally, the cinematic hallucinations that unspooled each time I so much as blinked. That was the worst part. I didn't even have to nod off anymore. A single eyelid click. The microsecond of darkness, and there it was again. An endless corridor lined with hospital green tiles. Fluorescent bulbs overhead, half burnt out, buzzed in a minor key. Water dripped from somewhere unseen, leaving rusty constellations on the floor. At the far end of the corridor hung a single red door, its paint peeling like scabbed skin. Every time I saw it, I knew with marrow-deep certainty that something waited on the other side. Something that breathed my name in a child's frightened whisper. The metered light on the dash glared 317 AIM when the dispatch crackled. Car 43, pickup Nostrand and Fulton. I rolled up to the curb. An elderly woman stood there, a shawl knotted at her throat despite the warm air, clutching a bird cage covered with a towel. She slid into the back, cage on her lap. "JFK, Terminal 5, she said. Her voice sounded like paper sliced by a razor. I pulled away, forcing my eyes open so wide they watered. At the next red light, the lids fell in spite of me. Blink, the corridor, the hum, the damp walls. When my eyes opened again, I nearly swerved. The woman had leaned forward, knuckles white on the plexiglass. She stared not at me, but at some point beyond my head. "I used to have that dream too," she murmured. "The hall that reeks of old bleach. The dripping makes it colder." My skin prickled so hard it hurt. "Sorry?" She sat back, apparently surprised at herself. "Never mind. Must have said that out loud." We rode in silence to the Van Wyck. Halfway there, she spoke again. "Do you ever reach the red door?" I almost stomped the brake right on the expressway. Somehow I delivered her to the terminal, my hands trembling against the wheel. When she paid, her fingers brushed mine. They were colder than the coins she offered. "Don't open it," she said, already stepping onto the curb. Her towel-draped cage rustled, though I never heard a bird inside. I sat a long time at the departures lane, hazard lights blinking like a heartbeat, trying to breathe. It wasn't the last time a passenger rifled through my private nightmare that night. 4:20 a.m. I picked up a Wall Street type outside a Murray Hill bar, suit jacket folded, tie undone, breath soaked in single malt defeat. 10 blocks in, he mumbled, "Flickering fluorescents make you feel like time hiccups, don't they? I keep seeing them even with my eyes open." He gave a sheepish laugh. "God, listen to me. Insomnia's a hell of a drug." My knuckles creaked on the steering wheel. I turned off the radio, but that only made the car feel tighter, like the corridor itself had curled into the cab. Next fare. A high school kid with headphones one size too big. He hummed a tune between sips of an energy drink. The identical half melody, the light fixtures in the corridor buzzed. I recognized it, the way you recognize your own pulse. I started to think I was leaking, that my private nightmare had seeped into New York's storm drains and come back up through other people's throats. Or maybe they were never passengers at all. Maybe, somewhere on the BQE, I'd nodded off for real and hadn't woken since. It was almost sunrise when I parked outside the 24-hour diner on 21st Avenue. Inside, every bulb felt weaponized. Manny, the graveyard cook, handed me a mug of coffee, black as engine oil. "You look like a chewed-up battery, Vic." "Been a long week," I said, because explaining the dripping corridor felt like a ticket to Bellevue. "You gotta sleep sometime, brother." I tried. I really did. I left Manny's counter, went to the men's room, splashed water on my face. In the mirror, my eyelids fluttered like dying moths. Blink. The red door. For the first time, it opened a crack. I swear I felt damp air slide into the stall. Smelled rust and old blankets. A child's whisper. "Victor." My own name, from behind the door. I kicked the sink cabinet and scalded myself awake. Back in the cab, dispatch offered a fare out to Rockaway Beach. Normally I'd decline, too far, too empty on the way back, but adrenaline demanded motion. I accepted. The passenger climbed in at a residential cul-de-sac, a man maybe my age, early 40s, unremarkable except for the tiredness on his face. That part I recognized. He didn't speak until we were on Cross Bay Boulevard. "I dreamed about a boy crying," he said suddenly. He was stuck behind a wall. I tried to find the seam, but every tile I pried loose revealed only more wall. Gooseflesh rose on my arms so violently it ached. "You get that one?" he asked, as if trading recipes. In the rear view, his eyes shone wet. I tightened my seatbelt, don't ask me why, and cleared my throat. "Stickier than superglue." He smiled without humor. "Yeah, the shrink calls it collective nightmare syndrome. Says stress floats through the social ether and lands wherever it can roost. Like pigeons." He paused. "But it's always the same hallway, same damn red door." I dropped him near a string of darkened summer bungalows kissed by the dawn. When he shut the door, he did it carefully, as if afraid of waking something. I started back toward the city, but exhaustion made the horizon wobble. I pulled onto the sandy shoulder, killed the engine, laid my forehead on the wheel. Just a minute of rest, I told myself. A minute became more. Blink. I stood inside the corridor, barefoot. My cab, the beach, the entire waking world had vanished. Water dripped in rhythmic time with my heartbeat. Each bulb fizzed overhead. The boy sobbed at the far end, beyond the door. The sound thin as a paper cut. I walked. My feet slapped puddles, sending ripples across my reflection. Under the nearest lamp, an object jutted from the wall. A taximeter, the same brand mounted in my dashboard. Its digits rode by themselves, fair climbing though no passenger rode. Beneath the meter, a small brass plaque bore a single line. Time owed. The number matched the hours I had been awake. 119. Behind me, footsteps slow, patient, waited. I turned. A figure in a driver's cap identical to mine followed 30 feet back. His face was lost in shadow, but I knew the slope of those shoulders, knew the weary curve of that spine. I ran. The corridor stretched, warped. My lungs clawed for air that smelled like radiator fluid. When I reached the red door, the latch pressed cold against my palm. "Don't open it," the old woman had warned. I opened anyway. Blackness rolled out, thick as crude oil, swallowing what little light remained. Something moved within it, shapes squirming, mouths forming my name over and over. I woke, or believed I did. The cab idled, sand whipping against its flanks, but the rear seat was no longer empty. The man from the Rockaway pickup sat there, though I'd left him behind 5 miles and a lifetime ago. He leaned forward, voice syrup slow. "Meter's still running, Victor." Cold oozed down my spine. I twisted to face him, and for a breath the world swapped lenses. I saw not upholstery but green tile, not a passenger, but the shadowed twin advancing in the corridor. I slammed the door open and stumbled onto the shoulder, sick with fear. By the time I spun around, the back seat was vacant again. I didn't return to the city right away. I drove aimlessly along the coastline until afternoon, sunlight razoring through a sky that looked overexposed. No passengers flagged me. I'd turned the light off anyway. The need for answers eclipsed the need for fares. That evening I headed to Brooklyn Heights, to a brownstone whose steps I hadn't climbed in 15 years. My sister answered the bell, surprise bearing whatever greeting she'd intended. "Vic, it's been a while." "I know." My tongue felt like sandpaper. "I need to ask about something. About when we were kids." Her living room smelled of lavender and toddler toys. She put coffee before me. I didn't drink. "Do you remember a hallway?" I asked. "In Dad's old hospital? The night we got stuck during the blackout?" She frowned. "Bits and pieces. They'd lost power on the pediatrics floor. We tried to find Mom." She shivered. "I still hate the sound of water dripping." There it was, the genesis, a real corridor, a real childhood fear, refueled every night by exhaustion and adult regret. "And the red door?" I pressed. She shook her head. "Never saw one." We talked around the past a while, but nothing else clicked. When I left, she hugged me extra hard, as if she sensed I floated half an inch outside my own skin. Before I descended the stoop, she said, "Promise me you'll sleep." "I'm working on it," I lied. Back in the cab, dusk pooled between brownstones. The dashboard clock rolled 7:07 p.m. Dispatch crackled. "Car 43, you copy? Priority pickup Clinton and Remsen." My thumb hesitated over the radio. I needed distance, but I needed money too. Old reflex 1. 43 on my way. The address was 2 blocks from my sister's building. A man in a charcoal coat stood beneath a lamppost. My height, my build, cap in hand. My pulse went feral. He raised a hand to hail me, but the gesture felt unnecessary, arranged ahead of time. He climbed in behind me. The mirror framed his face. I did not like what I saw, because it was my face. Not exactly. There were distortions, like a photocopy run a dozen times until lines blur. But the jaw, the scar on the chin from a childhood fall, the tired eyes. "All mine." "Where to?" I croaked. He leaned forward, breath fogging the plexiglass with the smell of chilled hallway air. "You already know." The meter clicked itself on. 0 to 0.01, digits turning without touch. I eased from the curb. We drove in silence across the Brooklyn Bridge, past Chinatown, up the FDR. Night solace hinged around us. Each time I blinked, the interior transformed. Seat fabric into green tile, dome light into humming bulb. My doppelganger never wavered. At 116th Street, he spoke. "You weren't always like this." "No? You once slept in cabs between shifts. You used to dream about winning the medallion lottery, taking Mom to Havana like you promised." I gripped the wheel. "Who are you?" "The man who still dreams." Traffic vanished. We glided through red lights as though the city had seated itself. Finally he said, "Exit here," directing me onto a service road near an abandoned tenement. I parked beside a sagging chain-link fence. Beyond it loomed a brick building whose facade had been painted red decades earlier, now flaking like dry lips. The door was not merely red, it was the red, paint curled at identical angles. My passenger opened his door. Wind funneled through the taxi, carrying the faint sob of a child. He beckoned. I followed, not because I trusted him, but because there was no mileage left in running. The red door's knob turned easily. Inside waited the corridor, intact, as if the house had grown around it. Tiles glistened, bulbs hummed. My other self walked ahead while I matched his pace. At the corridor's midpoint, he stopped at a steel cart. On it rested artifacts. Plastic pink baby shoes. A stack of overdue cab repair invoices. A coffee mug that read, "One Dad, My Life, Serialized." "They're memories," he said. "Each night you refuse to sleep, they get filed away here, unattended." "No," I said. "They get buried. I bury them." He faced me, and for the first time sorrow wormed through his expression. "Vic, you haven't slept since it happened." Images jagged through mind. Late shift, icy overpass, my eyelids quilting themselves shut, the lurch of the wheel, the screech, the rollover. A single scream, my daughter's. "I can't," I whispered. "That's not penance. That's surrender. The boy crying isn't her, it's you, stuck behind the wall you built." Tears slid, burning. I felt them in both worlds, salt from the corridor's recycled air, and from the summer night outside. My knees folded. The tiles were surprisingly warm. "Come with me," he said, offering a hand. I took it. We walked the remaining yards to the red door at the end. No warning voice stopped me this time. I pushed. Beyond lay the bedroom my daughter once painted sunflower yellow. Morning light spilled across a small bed. She sat there, 5 years old again, wearing pajamas printed with rockets. She smiled with a shy, gap-toothed grin that had unstitched my heart from the first moment I saw it. "Daddy?" "You're late," she said, swinging her feet. The grief buckled me. I fell to my knees, both worlds inside out. She slid off the bed and wrapped her arms around my neck with the incorporeal weight of memory. Even as I knew it wasn't real, it was also the realest anything had felt in months. "I miss you," I choked. "Then wake up," she whispered into my ear, voice echoing like distant water drips. "It's okay to wake up." The bedroom faded. The corridor thinned to a single strand of light that snapped like overstretched filament. I surfaced in my taxi, head against the steering wheel, tears dried and gritty. Dawn bled over the East River, painting the red door building gold. In the back seat no one sat. The meter read 0. For the first time in days, the numbers didn't move. I killed the engine, reclined my seat. Traffic murmured on the highway nearby, ordinary, forgiving. I closed my eyes. And nothing waited inside the blink but the soft warmth of darkness and, somewhere deeper, the beginning of a dream not yet written.